Before I dive into my story, can I ask you something? What would you do if the person you value most in the world shamed you in front of a crowd? What if you gave up your own dreams to nurture theirs, and they laughed at you and rejected you as if you were nothing? Just imagine the situation. I give my granddaughter, to whom I have devoted my entire life, a painting I painted with my own hands, from the bottom of my heart, and she publicly ridicules it and calls me a nobody. But later this painting got into a gallery and was sold for $30,000. My granddaughter apologized, but it was too late. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you loved? Write about it in the comments.
I'm Susan Mitchell.
I'm in my 60s. A widow. An artist. A grandma. My life's never been grand, and I've never craved the spotlight. I've lived simply in a cozy little house in Burlington, Maine. My days revolved around painting, feeling the breeze, and thinking about the people I hold dear. Especially my granddaughter, Emily. Emily's my heart, raised like my own daughter, really. My daughter, Rachel, had her young and was swamped, juggling 2 jobs to keep their heads above water. So Emily grew up with me, splashing paint in the dining room, pedaling her tricycle on our uneven driveway, and gathering daisies for little vases that drooped on the windowsill. She called me Mimi, not Grandma or anything else, just Mimi. Even as a teenager, Emily had a way of charming me into small favors, new art supplies or a trip to the mall, her smile always a little too practiced. When she was tiny, I was her entire universe. Time marched on and she grew up. The world crept in. Tablets took over from bedtime stories. Instagram replaced our messy art afternoons. I stepped back, proud but quietly aching, watching her life morph into something I hardly understood. Still, my love for her never wavered. Never. For 15 years, I did something she never knew about. Every month, I tucked away whatever I could from my tight budget. Holiday cash, skipped coffee runs, even delayed prescriptions, to save for her college fund. I knew she dreamed of attending the Rhode Island School of Design, that pricey, prestigious art school all the creative kids rave about. Tuition? Sky high. Living expenses? Brutal. But I believed in her dream, even when she stopped sketching, even when she never brought it up anymore, even when her visits dwindled unless she needed a favor. I still believed. For her 19th birthday, I wanted to give her more than just money. I wanted to spark a memory of who she was, of what we shared. So I created a painting for her. Not just any painting, but a piece of our past on canvas. I poured weeks into it, each brushstroke a piece of my soul. I painted the tire swing in our backyard, where she'd giggle at 6 years old, our old beagle Rusty, who left us when she was 9, the tulips that bloomed by her window every May, all under a gentle acrylic sunset. I wrapped it in simple craft paper, tied it with a soft blue ribbon, and slipped in a card that read, "May your future shine as brightly as the little girl you once were." I tucked it into the back of my car, my heart swelling with hope. I pictured her eyes sparkling when she unwrapped it. I imagined her throwing her arms around me, maybe even tearing up a bit. I was so wrong. Her party was a far cry from the birthdays I used to host. Think backyard picnics, homemade cakes, and streamers taped up with love. No, this was extravagant. Rachel had gone all in, crisp white tablecloths under a massive tent, a gourmet spread, a live band. Emily had a whole table piled with gifts, all wrapped in glossy paper and fancy bows. Everything screamed wealth, everything except me. I stood there in my worn navy sweater, clutching the painting like it was fragile crystal. Nobody really noticed I'd shown up, and that was fine. I wasn't there for them. Emily was in a sleek teal dress, teetering on heels I'd never dream of wearing. She flitted between tables, laughing brightly, snapping selfies, surrounded by friends who barely glanced my way. Eventually, Rachel caught sight of me and flashed a tight smile. "Oh, you're here," she said. Like I was some far-off relative, not the woman who once rocked her baby to sleep. I handed her the gift, offering a soft smile. "Where should I?" "Just toss it with the others," she cut in, already turning away. But I held on to it. Something told me to wait. I needed to give it to Emily myself. When she finally started opening gifts, everyone crowded around, phones out, recording. She ripped through packages, designer purses, gift cards, wireless earbuds. Then she picked up mine. I saw her hesitate. My plain wrapping stood out, humble and handmade. "Oh, this is from my Mimi," she said, her smile strained. She peeled back the paper, lifted the painting, and silence. Then came the laugh. "For real?" she said, holding it up like it was a gag gift. "A painting? That's all." She smirked. "Probably cost less than a decent gift card." Her friends chuckled. Someone mumbled, "Retro aesthetic, maybe?" Rachel shot me an awkward glance but stayed quiet. I stood there, rooted to the spot, my hands dangling uselessly. "It's cute, I guess," Emily added with a shrug, leaning the painting against a table leg like it was clutter. The crowd moved on. Nobody saw the sting in my eyes. That's the thing about being invisible. No one notices when you're hurting. I turned and shuffled back to my car, each step heavy, like I was dragging decades of memories behind me. Decades of baking her birthday cakes alone. Decades of bandaging her scraped elbows. Decades of praying over bills so she could have dance lessons, art supplies, or that summer camp she loved. I slid into the driver's seat, shut the door, and left the engine off. I drove home that night, thinking I'd lost everything. My love, my sacrifices, my hope. But what happened next changed my entire perspective. Want to know what I did? I didn't wail or sob. I just stared at my hands on the wheel, watching a single tear slide down and hit my old silver wedding ring. That's when it hit me. That painting was the truest thing I'd ever given. And she didn't see it. None of them did, not really. But I'd never forget. When I got home that night, I didn't bother flipping on the lights. I walked into the kitchen, dropped my bag on the counter, and stood in the quiet. The stillness of the house hugged me like a familiar friend.
No laughter.
No music. No voices urging me to perk up. No one asking if I was okay. I reached into the cabinet, pulled out a worn coffee mug, filled it with cold tap water, and settled at the kitchen table where I used to guide Emily through her math homework, where she'd perch with her legs tucked under, hair in a messy bun, asking me which shades to pick for her sketches. My eyes drifted to the corner where my art supplies sat. The easel stood empty, lonely. The nearby table, strewn with stiff brushes and crusty paint tubes, hadn't been touched since I finished her birthday gift. That painting consumed weeks of my time. Weeks of sore hands and tired eyes. Weeks of jolting awake at 2 a.m. to add just one more detail. She called it worthless, and her friends snickered along. I peered into my mug, my face a faint blur in the water's surface. Then I got up, shuffled to the hallway, and slid open the drawer where I kept a folder labeled Emily's College Fund. It was a hefty thing, bulging with every bank statement, receipt, and record from the savings I'd scraped together over 15 years. Every deposit, every penny pinched, every small sacrifice. I'd gone without new shoes.
Idée skippette salon visi.
I even cut the internet for a while. Each time I added to that fund, I'd whisper to myself, "It'll pay off. She's worth every cent." I powered up my ancient laptop, the one I rarely touched anymore, logged into my bank's website, and typed in the password I'd used since opening the account for Emily. The balance glowed on the screen, $22,000. I stared at it for what felt like forever, each dollar tied to a memory of what I'd given up. I thought of all the years I'd put my needs last, skipping doctor visits, wearing threadbare coats, telling myself it was for love. That night, I realized love shouldn't mean losing myself. Then I clicked transfer. Not to Emily. Not to her college fund. To my own checking account. I watched the loading bar crawl across the screen, as if daring me to back out. But I didn't. Not this time. Transfer complete. New balance, $0. I shut the folder, closed the drawer, and powered down the laptop. Nobody needed to know. Not yet. It wasn't about spite or getting even. It was something deeper, a quiet choice, born in the wreckage of that humiliation. For the first time ever, I picked myself. Not my daughter. Not my granddaughter. Not some ideal of what a grandma should be. Just me. I brewed a proper cup of tea this time, steaming hot, with a drizzle of honey. For the first time, I chose myself, but the story didn't end there. When Emily showed up at my door, everything took a turn I never expected. Guess what happened next? I sat in the stillness, sipping slowly, letting the quiet mend a small corner of my heart. I didn't feel strong. I didn't feel bitter. I just felt finished. The next morning, I half wondered if the night before was a dream. I shuffled into the kitchen, my slippers scraping the tile, and eyed the laptop like it might haunt me. But the transfer was real. The money was mine now, not hers. I braced for guilt, but it didn't come. Instead, there was this odd, unfamiliar calm in my chest. Not quite peace, but the absence of turmoil. That afternoon, my phone pinged with a text. "Hey Mimi, can I swing by? Miss you tons." I stared at the message for ages. She hadn't called me Mimi in forever, maybe a year. I didn't reply right away. 2 hours later, there was Emily, standing on my doorstep, holding a box of pastries from that fancy bakery in town. The one I'd always paused to admire, but could never justify splurging on. Her hair was swept back, her makeup softer than usual, her smile a little too wide to be genuine. "Mimi," she sang, throwing her arms around me before I could move. My body tensed, the memory of her party laughter slicing through me like a shard of ice. But I let her hug me. She smelled of high-end conditioner and vanilla. Not a trace of the little girl she used to be. "I've been thinking about you," she said, breezing into the kitchen like she did when she was a kid. "I owe you an apology for the party. I was just caught up in the moment." She paused. I didn't mean what I said. She sat at the table, hands clasped, her manicured nails catching the light. Her phone sat in her lap, screen glowing faintly. I shouldn't have dissed the painting. It was so thoughtful, really beautiful. I nodded, studying her face, searching for sincerity. Was it real? I wanted it to be. "I've missed you," she went on. "I know I've been distant. Life's been crazy, but I'm here now." She reached for my hand across the table, her eyes glistening, almost like she might cry. "I've been thinking about college," she said softly. "About RISD. I know the fun's tricky now, but I just want us to be close again. I'm not here for the money, Mimi. I swear. I miss what we had." Her words wove around me, soft and familiar, but with a sharp edge I couldn't ignore. Something in my chest softened. Maybe she was maturing. Maybe the party had sparked some regret in her. Maybe I'd been too quick to judge. She was young, impulsive, we've all been there. "I'll think things over," I told her gently. "But I'm glad you came." She flashed that big smile, the one she had at 8, when she'd scribble hearts and "I love you, Mimi" in wobbly marker. We munched on pastries. She stayed for dinner, even helped with the dishes, asking about my latest art projects. She brought up old times, the tire swing, Rusty the tulips. My heart started to trust again, to thaw. That night, I pulled out the college fund folder again. I didn't move any money, but I lingered on the thought longer than I meant to. Maybe I'd misjudged her. Maybe she'd learned something. Or maybe I wanted her love so desperately I'd rather be wrong. I barely slept, her voice looping in my head. "I'm not here for the money, Mimi. I swear." But louder still was the echo of her party. That laugh, that worthless jab. I shoved the doubt deep. Because sometimes it's easier to cling to a lie that feels like love than face a truth that leaves you empty. It was a Thursday afternoon when I found out. The kind of lazy day where nothing seems worth noticing. It was a gray, hushed, unremarkable Thursday. Emily had popped by that morning, her laptop under her arm, flashing a warm smile as she asked for help printing out a grant application. I'd been the family's tech whiz since the early 2000s, though these days I could barely navigate my smartphone updates. She dashed off after a quick lunch, saying she had to meet some friends. I lingered in the kitchen, scrubbing the handful of plates we'd used, softly humming a melody from a blues album we both used to adore. For a moment I thought maybe this is mending. Maybe we're piecing something back together. Then I wandered into the den. Her laptop sat there, still open, its faint hum filling the quiet, the screen casting a soft glow. My plan was simple: shut it down and shoot her a text to let her know. But my eyes snagged on the screen. A chat window was open, some app one didn't recognize, with Emily Sarah at the top. My instincts screamed to look away, but a deeper, fiercer urge, something protective, pulled me closer. The latest message hit me like a punch. "No worries, she's buying it." I played the sweet card, shed a few tears, told her I missed our old times. Total emotional hook. She always caves for that family stuff. My hands shook. Another message popped up, cold and sharp. "Just a few more visits, and she'll reinstate the fund, I bet. Told you she's so predictable. RISD by next summer, I'm calling it." I stared at the words, each one a calculated dagger. This wasn't a slip-up or a moment of carelessness. It was a scheme. Every visit, every hug, every nostalgic tale about Rusty and the tulips, every glistening tear, every pastry. It was all rehearsed, designed to play me. I don't know how long I stood there. Minutes. An hour. My legs finally gave in, guiding me to the couch where I sank down, the laptop still open on my knees, those messages blazing like a spotlight. Her voice, her Mimi, I've missed you, looped in my mind, each one sounding more hollow than the last. A chill settled over me, like the world had lost its warmth. How had I missed it? How had I fallen for it again? Her messages, littered with smiley faces and exclamation marks, didn't even sound like the girl I raised. She was a stranger. No, worse, a hunter preying on my feelings, twisting my love into a tool. I wanted to yell, but my voice wouldn't come. Instead, I eased the laptop shut like closing a chapter. The pain was real, but it wasn't just for someone I'd lost. It was for someone who'd never truly been there. The Emily I'd imagined, the curious kid with paint-smudged cheeks who once called me her hero. That girl was gone, maybe for longer than I'd wanted to admit. I sat in silence for the rest of the day, letting the truth settle. This wasn't just a letdown. It was betrayal, deliberate and cold. Later that evening, I drifted to my art nook and tugged the cloth off the canvas she'd ridiculed at her party. There it was, our story in paint. The tires swing, Rusty, the tulips. All I could hear was her word, worthless. But to me it was never about cost. It was about our past, my effort, my love. And then it clicked. She hadn't dismissed the painting. She'd dismissed me. I leaned close to the canvas, my voice steady, and murmured, "You're not the worthless one, and neither am I." My heart was broken, but this betrayal lit a fire in me. What I did next wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life. Ready to see how I turned pain into power? Sleep didn't come that night. I didn't even try. I curled up in my creaky armchair in the living room, a quilt draped over my shoulders, the house dark except for the soft amber glow of the streetlight seeping through the blinds. Pain, I learned, could be so quiet. It didn't always roar. Sometimes it just sat with you, breathing in rhythm, waiting for you to face it. Her words echoed endlessly. She always caves for that family stuff. I thought of all the times I had caved. When Rachel stormed out, calling me smothering, I let it slide. When Emily stopped coming by, I told myself she was just swamped. When holidays passed without a call, I still baked brownies and dropped them off. I caved because love softened me, because I believed in grace, in loyalty and fresh starts. But now I saw it clearly. It was survival. I'd spent my life carving off bits of myself to keep people from leaving. I gave until I was empty, then gave more. For what? So my granddaughter could mock me in private? So I could be conned into handing over my savings like some naive, lonely old lady? That night, I felt anger. Not the loud, reckless kind, but a sharp, steady fury. The kind that clears your vision and shows you who you've been and who you're done being. Around 3 a.m., I stood up, walked to the painting she'd called worthless, and gazed at it for a long time. The memories on that canvas didn't sting anymore. They weren't wounds now, they were evidence. Proof I'd loved deeply, given my all, been true, even when others weren't. I whispered, "You're not getting tucked away anymore." And I meant every word. I crossed to my bookshelf, dug out an old digital camera I hadn't touched in ages, and snapped a photo of the painting. Then I sat at my desk, fired up my laptop, and started typing. I found an online community for women artists my age, a small, warm corner of the web where people shared their creations, swapped stories, and lifted each other up. My fingers hesitated, but I uploaded the photo. In the caption I wrote, "Someone I love called this painting worthless, but I poured my heart into it. Every stroke holds a memory, every hue a piece of my soul." It may not mean much to some, but to me it was everything. I clicked post. I didn't expect much, maybe a few likes, a kind word or two. But it wasn't about the response. It was about speaking my truth, not just painting it, for the first time. I left the laptop on and returned to the living room, brewed a fresh cup of tea, and sat in the quiet. I thought my story might end there, in the quiet of my little house. But the world had other plans, and what happened next blew me away. Want to know where my painting took me? For the first time in ages, I didn't feel unseen. I felt alive. When I stirred the next morning, Sunlight was streaming through the blinds, painting golden streaks across the hardwood. My tea from the night before sat cold on the side table untouched. I stretched, my muscles stiff but buzzing with a strange new energy, like something deep inside me had clicked into place. I shuffled to the laptop, not expecting much from my post. Then I saw it. The screen was alive with notifications, likes, comments, shares. I blinked, stunned. Over a few weeks, my painting spread, first in the small online community, then through reposts on larger art pages, catching the eye of thousands. What started as a few kind comments grew into a wave of shares, with art bloggers calling it a story of resilience. Not just a flicker of pity, but real connection. People were truly seeing it. I opened the comments. This brought tears to my eyes. The emotion is so raw. Whoever called this worthless doesn't understand love. Are prints available? I need this in my living room. Please tell me you're showing this somewhere. My pulse raced. I felt warm, almost lightheaded. I kept scrolling. Messages flooded in, private notes, mostly from women. Mothers, grandmas, sisters saying my story mirrored theirs, that they'd been labeled too emotional, too generous, too fragile. But this painting? It was strength. One message stopped me in my tracks. Hi, Susan. I'm a curator at a small gallery in Portland. Your work hit me hard. Would you consider showing it here? It'd be an honor. I read it 4 times. Portland? A gallery? I glanced at the painting, still propped quietly against the dining room wall, half in shadow. The tires swing rusty, the tulips, my memories now shared with the world. My pain, transformed into something radiant. With shaky fingers I typed back. I'd be thrilled to. Within hours, more messages poured in. Art blogs, social media creators. Even a woman from a big online platform asking if I'd share my story for a feature. It was like I'd tossed a pebble into a calm pond, and somehow sparked a tsunami. That afternoon the Portland curator Claire called me. She said she wanted to travel to Burlington to collect the painting in person. This piece deserves special care, she told me. It's more than art. It's a story people need to hear. She asked about the title. I paused, then smiled. Call it The Discarded Treasure. Claire was quiet for a moment, then said, absolutely perfect. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table, letting it all sink in. This wasn't about getting even. It wasn't even about Emily anymore. It was about me reclaiming the pieces of myself I'd given away too easily. It was about taking what they'd scoffed at and making it untouchable. That night I didn't just sleep, I dreamed. Of vibrant colors, of glowing light, of finally being seen. 3 weeks later I stood in a sun-drenched gallery in Portland, my hands trembling as people milled around, whispering, lingering, studying my painting longer than I ever imagined they would. It hung on a crisp white wall, simply framed, softly lit. It felt powerful, not because of its craft, but because of the story it carried. My story. The Discarded Treasure. The placard read, by Susan Mitchell. I must have stared at that sign for a solid 10 minutes. Claire, the curator, sidled up to me. We had over 400 people at the opening, she murmured. It's the biggest turnout we've had all year. I blinked, floored. She grinned. And there's more. She led me to her cozy office in the back, stacked with drawings and folders. On her desk was a printed email. A collector from Seattle wanted to buy the painting.
$32,000.
Cash. I stared at the figure, my mind struggling to process it. Claire studied my face. You don't have to sell, she said gently. But if you do, this could fund a studio, trips, supplies, whatever you dream of. You've got something special, Susan. A voice. A heart. My lips quivered. For so long I believed my voice was irrelevant, my heart a burden, that I was just a vessel for others' ambitions. But here my pain had value. My truth mattered. I nodded. Tell them yes. We finalized the sale that day. I signed my first artist's contract, my hand barely steady enough to grip the pen. Claire insisted on snapping a photo of me in front of the painting before it left the gallery. Standing in that gallery, I felt seen for the first time in years. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. A journey I never imagined. Ready to see where my story went next? Smile like you feel it, she said. And I did. For the first time in ages, I truly meant it. Back home in Burlington, things felt different. Rachel called out of nowhere one day. saying she'd heard my painting was making waves. No apology, no praise, just nosiness. I kept the details vague. Then Emily showed up. No call, no text. Just a knock at my door one evening, her face drawn, eyes glossy with tears. I almost didn't open it, but I did. "Can we talk?" she asked. I stepped aside, letting her in. We sat at the same kitchen table where she used to slurp oatmeal in her PJs, where I'd helped her glue together history projects, where she'd once sworn I was her favorite person ever. She clasped her hands, her face the same one I'd watched grow for 19 years. "I saw the painting," she said. "Online. People are talking about you, about it." I stayed silent. She faltered, then continued. "I want to apologize again. For the party, for everything." I raised an eyebrow. She went on, her hands fidgeting now. "I messed up, Mimi. I was dumb, selfish. I took you for granted. I want to make things right." I leaned back, arms crossed. "What does make things right mean to you?" She swallowed hard. "I still want to go to RISD. And maybe if things are different now, maybe you could." There it was. The truth seeping through her words. Still after the money. Still after me. But this time I wasn't running to meet her halfway. I stood up. She looked at me, startled. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, "You called my love worthless. You faked caring because you thought I'd bankroll your dream again. You treated me like a means to an end." She opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. "You lost something at that party, Emily. Not just money. You lost the one person who believed in you no matter what." I walked to the door and opened it. "You want something from me? Earn it." She rose slowly, her face tight, pride stung. I didn't expect a hug and I didn't get one. She left without another word. I watched Emily descend the porch steps, heading to her car, back to whatever tale she'd spun to justify her actions. As for me, I stepped back inside, alone but finally complete. A week slipped by after Emily left my house without a word. No texts, no calls. And honestly, I wasn't holding my breath for one. For the first time in ages, the quiet didn't sting. It felt fresh, like a room being aired out for something new. Then one morning, as I sipped tea on the porch, Rachel appeared. No knock, just strode in like it was still 2006 and I was watching Emily after preschool. Her boots clacked sharply on the hardwood, her hair flawless, her jacket crisp, her face etched with irritation. "I just came from Emily's," she snapped, skipping any greeting. I took another sip, waiting. "She's in tears. Says you shamed her, made her feel worthless, that you're tossing her aside over a painting." I stayed silent. She went on. "She told me about the money, the college fund. Said you yanked it back without a heads up." Still I didn't speak. I let her vent. Rachel threw up her hands. "Do you even realize what you're doing? You're wrecking her future, punishing her for being young and careless, for one dumb comment at a party." At that I rose deliberately slow. I walked to the counter, lifted the heavy folder labeled Emily's College Fund, and held it up. "This," I said, my voice steady, "is 15 years of my life. Every sale I skipped, every prescription I didn't fill, every winter I kept the thermostat at 60 to save a few bucks. This is my sacrifices." And she mocked it. Rachel bristled. She was upset. "No," I cut in. "She was cruel." Then she came back, played sweet to get the money. "She didn't apologize, she acted. And I nearly bought it." Rachel folded her arms, her face tight. "So what? You let her dreams collapse." I met her gaze. "She's 19. Not a toddler. If her dreams matter, she'll hustle for them. Not trick the woman who loves her." Rachel's cheeks reddened, guilt maybe or fury, I couldn't tell. "I raised you better," I said softly. "And I raised her better. But somewhere, you both learned to take without giving back." I crossed to the desk, pulled out a new folder and set it down. It was labeled in bold marker, "Susan Mitchell's Freedom Fund." "I'm using the money now," I said. "Not for anyone else, for me." She stared at it, her lips parting, but no words came. "I gave you both decades," I continued. "Now I'm claiming a few years for myself." Rachel finally muttered, "You really won't fund RSD?" "No," I said, unwavering. "I already paid with everything I had, and you threw it away." She left without another word. Me? I poured another cup of tea. My hands were steady this time. They say when one door shuts, another swings open. But sometimes it's not about doors. Sometimes it's about the walls tumbling down, letting you finally glimpse the horizon. A few days after Rachel's visit, I got an email from an editor at the Boston Herald. She'd seen my gallery show, my painting, and wanted to feature me in an article called Blossoming Later: Women Who Found Their Voice After 60. I chuckled at the title. Late bloomer? Maybe. Or maybe I'd always had something to say, just drowned out by others too often to hear it. The interview was by phone, the editor kind and inquisitive. She asked about the painting, its story, my path as an artist. I shared it all. Not naming Emily, not to shame but to speak my truth. My painting was dismissed, I told her. Not because it lacked worth, but because the person it was for couldn't see love staring her in the face. She paused, then said, "That's going to hit home for so many." The article dropped 2 days later. Took off. Messages flooded in from women nationwide. Grandmas, moms, even young women who saw their futures in my past and vowed to pivot before it was too late. I was invited to speak at an online summit for women over 60. A publisher reached out about a potential memoir. My inbox bloomed with stories of bravery and vulnerability from strangers who felt like family. Then came the email. Florence, an art collective showcasing women artists globally, had seen my painting on a viral art blog and wanted to include the discarded treasure in a traveling exhibit across Europe. They asked for more of my work, and after I sent a few older pieces, they offered to cover my travel to join the exhibit. They'd cover my flights, my stay, everything. "Your story is what the world needs," the woman said, her Italian accent warm and earnest. After hanging up, I sat still for ages. I wasn't just seen, I was heard. Not as someone's mom or grandma, but as Susan. That night, I stepped into my studio and set up a fresh canvas. I didn't paint Emily, the tire swing, Rusty, or the tulips. I painted a woman perched on a cliff's edge, arms flung wide, hair dancing in the breeze, gazing at an endless horizon, fearless. Called it Liberty. I hung it in the hallway, right where the college fund folder once sat. This life, this peace, this strength was the education I'd been denied. But I claimed it anyway, stroke by stroke, breath by breath. The world doesn't always at 16 make sense. It doesn't always lift up the good, the kind, the ones who pour their hearts into others. I used to believe it did. I used to think if you gave enough, something good would come back. But that wasn't my truth, not until now. Florence was a dream. I stepped into that gallery along the Arno like I'd never known rejection, never known silence. The city, the lights, the people. It was all more vibrant than I'd ever pictured. The artists around me were young, radiant, full of promise. They had the futures I once dreamed of decades ago. The vibrant spotlight of fame wasn't what I craved anymore. I didn't need dazzling city lights to prove my value. I knew I was enough just as I was. That evening in Florence, when my painting was unveiled to the crowd, I watched them pause. They stood still, eyes locked on the canvas, some with tears glistening, others frozen, as if soaking in every ounce of heart I'd poured into it. I wasn't just sharing my art. I was revealing myself. I'd never realized how much it could ache to finally be seen, to be acknowledged for the love, the sacrifices, the fragments of myself I'd buried to lift others up. But stepping into that gallery, I was expected to be nothing but Susan Mitchell, and that was enough. Later, as I stood beside the painting Emily had ridiculed, new opportunities poured in. A prestigious gallery in Edinburgh reached out, eager to showcase my work. A curator from a women's art collective in New Zealand wanted to feature my pieces in an exhibit on resilience. Invitations to speak at conferences and share my journey kept coming, each one echoing the same message: your story matters. Your voice counts. The emails piled up, the phone rang endlessly, but nothing touched me like what happened next. One night after the Florence exhibit, I strolled along the Arno River, the city's lights shimmering in the distance. In that quiet moment, I felt whole. I was Susan Mitchell, artist, creator, a woman who finally grasped her own worth. In that moment by the Arno River, I found peace. But one last surprise waited for me back home. Something that changed how I saw everything. Want to know what it was? As the night wrapped around me, a deep peace settled in. I hadn't just broken free from Emily, from Rachel, from a world that once made me invisible. I'd broken free from the version of myself who believed she wasn't enough, who let others take without giving back. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. When I returned to Burlington, my home felt transformed, airier, brighter. I dove into a new series of paintings, each one capturing the growth I'd fought for, the healing I'd earned. These weren't the gentle, nurturing women I'd once painted. These women were fierce, unyielding, radiant. Some stood bold against towering peaks. Others raised their arms to the sky, unafraid to be noticed. I was no longer the woman who stayed silent, who let herself fade into the background. My art wasn't invisible, and neither was I. But the real gift, the true freedom, came when I claimed my space in the world without apology, without doubt. I'd become the woman I was always meant to be, and that was beyond price. Weeks after Florence, the world kept reaching out. Art collectors, galleries, journalists, all wanted a piece of my story, my work. It was overwhelming, yet it felt right. I didn't chase the spotlight or the praise. What mattered were the quiet moments when I could sit with myself, unburdened, fully me. One evening, I stood on my porch in Burlington, watching the sun sink below the hills. The fields stretched wide, dotted with pines, the little stream on my property glinting in the fading light. The breeze carried the scent of cedar, and the world felt alive, more alive than it had in decades. I didn't know where Emily was. I'd stopped asking. Rachel hadn't called. Maybe they were still bitter, upset that I wasn't the woman who gave endlessly without expecting anything in return. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone stronger, someone who knew her value. I painted daily now. When I picked up my brush, Emily didn't cross my mind. I thought about what lay ahead. I painted women with arms wide open, standing tall, facing the unknown with fearless eyes. And when I finished, I didn't keep them hidden in my studio. I shared them with the world. They resonated with women who, like me, had been silenced or dismissed, who'd been told their love wasn't enough. That's when it hit me. I'd spent years giving my heart away, not realizing I was the one who needed to be seen. Then something unexpected arrived. A small envelope in the mail, with Emily's name in her familiar, careful handwriting. My heart caught as I opened it. I hadn't heard from her in months, and I braced for anything. The note was brief. Mimi, I can't erase the pain I caused, and I'm not asking for anything. I've been reflecting, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want to say I'm sorry. I was selfish, and I regret how I treated you. I hope someday you'll see me differently. Love, Emily. I read it 3 times, letting the words settle. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even hurt. I was just done. I'd released the pain, the expectations, the weight of clinging to something that was never mine to carry. I folded the letter neatly and tucked it into the drawer with the old college fund folder, the one that had once ruled my life. The money was gone, but so was the burden. With that release, I shed any need for approval from anyone but myself. Over the next few months, I traveled again, returning to Europe to explore places I'd never dreamed I'd see. I soaked in new sights, connected with new faces, and discovered beauty in every corner. My laughter came easier, my heart opened wider, and I painted with a fearless joy I'd never known. One sunny afternoon, while strolling through an art market in Portugal, I met a man named Daniel. He was a fellow artist, a bit older than me, with a quiet kindness and a deep love for life's simple moments. We talked for hours, about creativity, grief, dreams, our conversation flowing naturally unguarded. We met up a few more times, sharing stories of the lives we'd led, and the ones we hoped to shape now. He wasn't searching for someone to complete him, and I wasn't either. Together, though, we created something genuine, not about filling gaps, but about building something lovely from what we already carried. When we said goodbye, I didn't feel empty. Loneliness had lost its grip. I knew deep in my bones that I had everything I needed, not in others but within myself. Back in Burlington, I stood before a canvas I'd been pouring myself into for weeks. It was a portrait of a woman, weathered but fierce, her eyes bright with strength, her arms flung wide as if embracing the universe, fully alive, fully here. No chains held her, no shame weighed her down, just pure unshakable peace. I named it Liberty, because that's what I'd finally claimed. It was mine, every bit of it, and its value was beyond measure. If you enjoyed this story, Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Do you think Susan did the right thing? Let us know in the comments. We also recommend that you listen to the story of how a woman who gave her whole life to her family was thanked by her family with a plastic plate and a separate table for her birthday. But what this woman did next shocked everyone. Just click on the window on the left and listen to this story.